Did you learn anything in your debates with Senator Sanders? Quote, well, I've learned to my relief that good hair isn't everything. And I've been reminded that I'm not a socialist. I don't believe the government should control everything and simply tax and tax, and I don't think Wall Street is a fraud, but I'm a progressive. 3 weeks nonstop reading WikiLeaks, and I'm delusional about things that Hillary Clinton is play acting. Welcome to Progressive Soup. I'm Mark Morash, filling in for David Stevenson, who is off delivering the next batch of secret emails to Julian Assange in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. And he's going to sneak them out in his side backpack. Anyhow, we're back. And I forgot to give attribution properly. Got to give credit where credit is due of that email and the one I read in the previous show. Those two quotes are by a gentleman by the name of Bill Ivey. Bill Ivey, who was the head of the National Endowment for the Arts, practicing ways to keep us a compliant citizenry. But we're not a compliant citizenry. That's why we do Progressive Soup. And we're back. We have 3 guests today. We have Cora Santaguida, who is running for the 27th State Senate as a Green Party candidate. We have Rolf Maurer, who is running as a Registrar of Voters for the Green Party. And we have longtime guest Joe Niola, who is back joining us. Haven't been here since the Bernie days, but we are going to talk about being a non-compliant citizenry. So let's talk a little bit more while we start about platforms. Go ahead, and a couple points in your platform you wanted to bring up.
Well, last show I talked about certain things that kind of coincide with Rolf's things. And, like I said in the first show, the Green Party is very consistent. So if you look at Dr. Jill Stein's platform, a lot of my ideas come from her. We support the 10 key values. So I guess a couple things that I did not bring up. I want to talk a bit about the military. One of the things that I'd like to do is propose having a union for the enlisted. That way it protects them in regards to violating the Constitution and their conscience to kind of keep them from participating in war crimes. The other thing locally is 4th of July celebration. Now, while it is difficult to cancel city events, I'd like to propose a ban or a partial ban on fireworks at home. For combat, people who are enlisted or veterans who have PTSD and other combat-related issues, mental issues. The other thing, State Public Bank. And actually, several of our local candidates have been speaking about this for several elections. In 2008, during the collapse, North Dakota managed to stay in the black, and that is because they had a state public bank. And that is definitely something that I propose. Also, on a local level again, banning the sale of commercially bred cats and dogs. And also a little bit about the police. I'm against body cameras because while yes, it can record evidence for investigations for good. I mean, let's look at our track record, to be honest. These body cameras get switched off. Or with the body cameras, who's to say that the police officer isn't going to spy or record something that, they really don't need to be recording. They don't have a right. And then we're just talking about a whole new thing going on. And finally, about police. I think there should be less car patrol. You see, squad cars and SUVs all over the place. We need more foot patrol. And some people are like, walk the beat, But really, I think these officers are not connected to the community enough. And I think if they get to know people, I'm not saying they need to go out for coffee or anything, but develop some sort of a relationship. I think you would see a decrease in a lot of the tension. So that's it, so thank you.
Sure, talking about getting to know people. Now, if there are more things in your platform you want to bring up, but since you're running for Registrar of Voters, one of the things we hear very much in not in the mainstream media, but everyone's talking about Jill needs to get 5%. Can you explain that a little bit to folks, why that's very important?
Well, if she gets 5%, then she qualifies for
Federal funding.
Mm-hmm. And that means that she gets a lot more visibility and a lot more support. Now, we're really big on trying to get college students behind her. 43 million of them are in severe college debt. It'll be for a lifetime. So she has several approaches on how to rectify that situation so that they can contribute to the economy again. And that she said repeatedly that could turn the tide regarding her chances as running for president to get into office.
In regards to getting federal funding, or in terms of getting college students engaged?
Yeah.
Because so here's the question. We talk about 5% and getting federal funding.
Sure.
But in this campaign, it's been shown that the right candidate can raise $227 million. What is the federal funding level right now? It's 20 million, 30 million. It's not as much as we saw Bernie being able to raise. So I hear the talk about being able to get federal funding, and I don't know right now. I haven't looked at the Green Party's all of the statements of what you have to report what you've raised. But I think even more importantly than the funding is ballot access.
Yes, that is.
Because if she gets 5%, then come the next presidential campaign, y'all don't have to go out in the street and get all of the signatures, which, as I think we all know, was a real last-minute run and dash and grab. And I got to say, the Green Party did a great job getting her on the ballot in 47 states. But it's a lot of work. It comes back to what we talked about earlier, getting the 1% of the vote in as many seats as possible so that next cycle, other folks can just run, is able to build things without a doubt.
Well, that's very, very interesting. And if word gets around and it impresses the established, privileged, established party system, she's going to need more than 5%. Simply because the situation is designed to perpetuate itself to the disadvantage of any serious changes that a third party could possibly create. Therefore, you're going to need more than 5%.
You always hear in local elections that the Democrats and the Republicans want to run a complete slate. And there's 30, 40 positions that need some running. And there's a reason that they do that is even if the person's not serious about running, even if they don't feel the person has a chance to win, you need the person running to make everyone know that that is still an active campaign. Sure. Mm-hmm. And in some way, what I think is very interesting, and I hope that the Green Party and all of us who are looking for a third party, a fourth, a fifth party, starting November 9th, if you're able to get 1%. The Green Party, for your seat, got 1% 2 years ago, and 1% 4 years ago. If you have enough voters to get you 1% in that race, there's enough voters to get 1% in all of the other races for and that would mean that the next election cycle, all of that energy and effort of having to go out and get signatures, you can hop right to fundraising. You can hop right to getting the word out.
Sure.
And so you look at what's happening. I mean, it's why brand new Congress is doing what they're doing, is they want to just have all the people and raise them all up together. But what the Green Party is doing is getting more and more folks running is inspiring because it's going to bring about that kind of change.
And brand new Congress is going, it's very bipartisan in the sense that they are attempting to influence Republicans and Democrats. They really feel that this movement that Bernie Sanders created, which was extremely successful, they want those. They want a piece of that constituency, and so it should work very effectively. It may even work better than what the Tea Party was able to accomplish. They'll be able to get a strong progressive influence in the Congress. Bernie's not through yet. He recently spoke out against a drug company that appeared to be gouging the American citizens with ridiculously high prices for medications that they require, and his voice affected the stock price.
Essentially, it was the $400 million tweet that day where he tweeted something about them, the stock. They lost $400 million in stock capital that day. I want to step back, though, talking about the Green Party and getting more and more candidates on. And when we look at moving forward with a third party, you had brought to my attention something very local, that even in the schools, there's an ignoring and an ignorance of third parties. There was an article that at West Hill High School, they were doing an in-school election. Why don't you guys talk about that a little bit and see where we go with that?
Well, I mean, I have to say, and I put this up on my State Senate page on Facebook, but I am very impressed, that so many young people are weighing in. And, yes, this is a whirlwind of, an election. Also, we can thank social media, the art of the meme, right? But, the thing is that, when educators step in to teach them about the campaign or to get them involved, really they're only covering the two parties. In that particular article, they had somebody playing Trump, somebody playing Clinton. There was absolutely no mention of Gary Johnson or Dr. Jill Stein, and certainly not any other of the smaller write-in parties. So, but the thing is that, both Gary and Jill, they're on enough state ballots to mathematically win the election. And then, the whole thing with the debates and the unfair polling requirement. But, real quick in this article, when, they were talking about teaching the kids about democracy, I kind of laughed. I mean, first of all, no, because they're not being educated on who they can vote for, right? But, talking about ballot access, and ballot access in general is really the bare bones or the core of our struggle, because yes, it prevents visibility, which is all too often viewed as reluctance, which is most unfortunate. But also, when you're teaching people, and young people especially, about the democratic process, what better than to talk to them about ballot access issues? The laws, the process of how to talk to people, how you can become an activist through that.
But it's Bill Ivey. It's getting rid of civics and getting a compliant. So you talk about being against Common Core.
I am.
It's amazing that there's even the space for this in school, where you're teaching to a test. The irony, of course, when we were talking about this earlier, was I'm West Hill, class of but we were in high school when Ross Perot ran, and I was the Ross Perot backer in school, who everyone thought was nuts, but we were talking third party. And so here we are 20 years later, more than 20 years later. And so, while we don't know the details, in some way it's gone backwards, because back then we were having that third, even the debates, Perot was in the debates. That's what made him in the eyes of the public. That's what gave him 19% of the vote. And of course, here we are. How many people did we have in the debate?
Well, you know what? I just want to say that I really appreciate being on this panel. And I just love what you're saying, Cora. Because it's like what I feel has to be said, you too, Rolf, and the direction we're going in. But I got to take a devil's advocate position.
Go for it.
Let's face the horrible facts that people tend to follow the main media. Yeah, they're looking at what what Rupert Murdoch has to push on Fox News. They're looking at they're not looking at the full picture, and they're not going to get the full picture because the main media is also tied in, all right, to the large corporate financial interests, and they benefit from that.
Well, the Democrats and Republicans, they're all about the corporate-driven smoke and mirrors.
Right.
That's really what it is.
And what are they
So-
telling the viewers? Listen, it's either Trump or it's either Hillary, one or the other, which is not necessarily in the best interest of the country, and they don't particularly care. And even the press, for that matter, the press used to be journalists that were coming out of the working class. They're not that anymore. They're these elitist pundits, okay? And they're also part of this process that keeps power in the hands of the economic elite and out of the reach of the American people. And it's this distortion that has, on the one hand, positively put a spin on Bernie Sanders. And I shouldn't say spin, because I think Bernie is straight, he's upright, he's doing the best he possibly can to introduce progressive measures that are going to benefit the people. All right? He's doing that. But then on the same token, all right, there's another populist movement where there's a tremendous amount of dissatisfaction because the economy is doing so well, but there's a lot of people that are unemployed and are not doing so well. And they're fed up, and they like to throw a hand grenade or a Molotov cocktail into the entire process. And as far as they're concerned, they're blind to anything but this fellow Trump, who seems to be the man that can do something for them. Unfortunately, all right.
But what it shows is that there is an interest in an anti-establishment candidates, ideas, ideals, policies. I mean, I'll say, and I've said it multiple times, that when I was out canvassing, I had better conversations with Trump supporters than I did with Hillary supporters.
It's the same with us.
Because we all had a shared need for something better. We come at it from very diametrically opposed positions, but I could completely respect the idea that we're trying to find a better way, whatever better is. I mean, that's in everyone's, the eye of everyone. Everyone's own eye is going to be what is better. But it's so important to. To reach across the aisle. I mean, it was Senator Chris Murphy, a Democrat, and Senator Paul, who were the ones who stood up and said, you know what, we got to stop selling arms to Saudi Arabia. A libertarian and a Democrat working together across the aisle, and it's those cross-platform things. We're not going to agree on everything. And the idea that there's a dichotomy, you're either all of this or all of this, we're moving past that. We're evolving past that. So share progressive soup with all your friends on TV, on social media, pass it around, because this is where these conversations are going to start. And it has to grow to as many ears as possible, especially when folks are hungry for the soup.
Unfortunately, once again, a devil's advocate position. Take the Democratic platform, for example. They will advocate for gay rights, LGBT, the disabled. They will look at some of the progressive initiatives that could possibly be enacted. They'll do all that. And what they're doing, in effect, is they're throwing a bone. Okay, they're throwing a bone because they are going to make sure that the TPP trade agreement is passed.
But right now, the platform is what it is, and all we can do is, after the election, try and hold to it. So in that regard, in regards to the Democratic platform, tell us some differences in the Green platform versus what was agreed upon at the DNC.
Well, see, the thing is that, first you got to look at the difference between liberal and progressive. One of the biggest differences is that liberals will, profit off of our misfortune, as where progressives will examine the root and the cause of misfortune and build their movements from there. So that's one thing. Dr. Jill Stein, she is addressing things holistically. And, we're delivering politics, not in a pretty little box. So I can understand how people may be, kind of scared or kind of skeptical because, it kind of looks like a mess. But, to be honest, nothing that's sweet is really effortless, and nothing looks that pretty. And I think that's where people get tripped up. And getting back to what Joe said about mainstream media, the media likes to pack things up and just hand it to you in like a 60-second segment. And that's the thing with as far as Jill's media blackout. She does have interviews, or at least up until recently, with media outlets, but people really aren't relying on that for their information. What's happening is that people are in front of their TVs after dinner, and they're getting all of their facts from these little snippets of sentences about Trump and Clinton, almost like as if they're getting an update on Jay-Z and Beyonce. It's kind of on the same level, and I think that's where we're running into some problems.
Well, as far as the Democrats and the Green and Jill is concerned, that whole business of health insurance, she's a single payer health insurance. She would like to take that whole Obama care and make some modifications in that for sure. Yeah. Health insurance weighs 30%. Medicare only weighs 3%. She is definitely. As far as the Affordable Care Act, as far as she's concerned, it's neither affordable nor is it caring. So she's inclined to do something significant in the healthcare area. As far as gun control is concerned, she wants to reduce the culture of violence, and she feels that one way to do it is through mental health, putting more money into mental health. In other words, you can control the guns, and maybe you can help the people, and those people that are helped will not be purchasing guns to do more damage to other people.
And addiction is not a crime, it's a disease.
Correct.
So that's another thing.
And another thing too is she is against the TPP. As far as she's concerned, the TPP is like NAFTA on steroids.
Yes.
So she's against that. So there's a lot of areas where once you look at her platform and you look at the Democratic platform, you can see that she's far more progressive. She's a lot closer to what Bernie was purporting, and she's the ideal candidate for the progressive populist thinking voter, but they're not going to know that because she is going to be suppressed in any which way possible by the media at large.
So, using progressive soup to get past that suppression, there are a large number of voters out there who don't know of Jill Stein, or there are a large number of folks who backed Bernie and may be considering writing him in, might be considering not voting. Take the last few minutes of the show to appeal to those folks about, we've talked about 5%, we've talked about ballot access, we've talked about federal funding. Use the last few minutes to appeal to folks why voting for Jill is important.
Well, do you want to? Go ahead. Sorry.
We've heard the argument about voting for a third-party candidate is a wasted vote. If you vote for Bernie Sanders as a write-in, that is literally a wasted vote because he has to be registered as a write-in candidate, and he's not.
There's a few states where you are able to do that. Several states have the sore loser laws, and then the rest of them where you have to register, those deadlines passed around the time of the Democratic National Convention.
And you can't just write Bernie Sanders down. There's a lot of Bernie Sanders in the phone book. You have to write Bernie Sanders, exactly, Vermont right. Senator, and how many people are going to remember to do that?
Well, Cora was telling me before, our appeal is to, and Cora really said it well, is that why did you vote for Bernie Sanders in the first place? Get to the essence of it, and then you can see how very similar Jill Stein's campaign is, and I would say in many areas more fundamental, more comprehensive.
Right, and what I said before about the, delivering politics in a neat little package, I think a lot of Bernie supporters, they really want that change, but they want the kind of the comfort of the habit of a major party, and that's where we're kind of butting heads. It's kind of like, it's going to be okay. Third party is going to be okay. You know, we don't need big money telling us what to do, because democracy does not back us into a corner. But you know, it allows us to speak, think, and do for ourselves.
I will add in there that there are presidential elections where more than two candidates won electoral votes. And even though we didn't get to the point of talking about getting rid of the Electoral College, there are elections. I mean, Abraham Lincoln won in an election where 4 candidates won states. So the idea that you can only have the Democrats and Republicans winning a state is untrue. I mean, you look at that, you go even closer. I mean, Abraham Lincoln was 1860, blah, blah, blah. It was right before the Civil War, which is kind of frightening. But you go to 1912 and you look at Teddy Roosevelt and Taft and Wilson, and all 3 of them won electoral votes as well. Mm-hmm. So the idea that the people can't back more than 2. We're intelligent people. We can back more than 2 major parties and raise those candidates up.
And the fact that we have, you know, half of our voters are unaffiliated, you know, they're really not so sure. You know, so I think that this is the time. We are at the brink of something, because this is probably, the most historic election. We have the second most despised candidate. So we really need to, you know.
Okay, quickly, name and what you're running for.
Cora Santaguida, State Senate, District 27, Box 4F.
Rolf Maurer, I'm running for Registrar of Voters for the city of Stamford. Of course, I'm with the Green Party, and I'm at Box 6F.
If you're not in a swing state, take a look at that third-party candidate. If you're a Republican, you may want to look at Gary Johnson. Despite the faux pas on Aleppo, which seems to be a real press way to nail him unfairly, if you're a true progressive, look at Jill Stein and mark her on your ballot. If you're in a swing state, once again, you may have to hold your nose and vote for Hillary simply because a Trump presidency would be devastating to any progressive movement.
And you can find Jill Stein on Box 1F.
You find her on 1F. So everyone here is running. I guess that means I'm running as well. I have no idea what I'm running for, other than maybe to go read more WikiLeaks, because they've probably released another 2,000 emails. I'm totally obsessed, but that's kind of what we're all here doing, is we're looking for a better way. We're looking for a better world. Thank you all for coming out and joining us. Good luck, good luck, good luck in the elections. I hope it goes well. Mm-hmm. Keep the party rolling for everyone. And we'll get to sit here again at some point afterwards, and we'll see what happens, and we'll work from there. So I am Mark Morash, sitting in for David Stevenson, who has already dropped things off at the Ecuadorian embassy in London, and he will be back next week if he doesn't get captured by London authorities. And if he's not here, well, this is Progressive Soup.